before about barometric pressure and all the rest of these things, that those are outside factors that can still
influence what's going to happen. So again, I think that, and really, you know, I like to always say, because it's something we always look, if I'm looking at it, I look to nature. Does that happen in nature? No. Is there a spectral change over time? Obviously, is there a change in intensity as there's sunrise and sunset? Absolutely, all that. But the thing is, you're getting so much intensity from the middle part of that sun that with these artificial lights, having that intensity on either sides, to me, I'm just going.
We're Jug Dealers, we're the podcast you need in your feed, teaching the game like you never seen. Jerin, Gabe, GRAMBO, true OGs, masters of the globe, set your mind free. From Denver, Colorado, where the date is green, we set the data points for the SOPs. Jug Dealers Podcast, yes indeed.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Jug Dealers Podcast, where we discuss all things cannabis and lifestyle related. Brought to you by the good people at 5E and available at jugdealers.net and jugdealers.shop. Jerin, we are back in studio.
We are back.
How are we doing today?
We're doing great. No, it's always good to be in. It's always good to see everybody. Be back in studio, chat about some things. We're going to do another questions episode. But before that, definitely, again, want to remind everybody, we do have that samples tab, jugdealers.net/samples. We do have a bookings tab as well now, so you can follow along with where we're at in the world. If you haven't subscribed, please do help us out and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. You guys have been really help sending us to new places. And we're going to continue working hard on the content. And in all honesty, we've been having such good content. We've been getting a bunch of good questions. And so periodically we do like to, kind of run through these and try and figure out some of the ones that are, common themes that keep coming up. So anyhow, without any further ado, let's get into the sauce. I will open us up.
First question
on this particular question. We'll knock it back and forth as we like to do. I'll introduce this question and throw it over to my compatriot Gabe here, and then we will do some chit chatting. Okay, this is from Nichols75_W. OMC?
WOMC.
Womack. Okay. Anyway, Nichols75_WOMC. Thank you for the question. We see you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the support. Will seeds developed and purchased from other countries deliver the same growth and quality as they do in the country of origin? I heard the boys mention a variety will get better with each run in its own environment. Okay. This is a great question. It's something that definitely involves phenotype, which is something that's been talked a lot about, whether it's in the selection process or within different lighting use. So whether something's been selected under HPS and then taken and ran under LED, is it going to be the same? Well, it's the same genetics, but you're not going to get the same expression. Why? Because phenotype is genotype plus expression, or genotype plus environment equals phenotype, right? So we're not breaking science here, but why don't you give us a little bit of your thought process on this, Gabe, about, it's kind of an extension of the selection under a certain light versus selection in a different country.
We always discuss seed vigor. And seed vigor is a real thing. Anything that is bred somewhere obviously is going to grow best in that environment. That is not to say that things will not acclimatize over time and adjust. But the reality is, if you buy something that's from the Northwest, if your environment is like the Northwest, then that genetic will probably do well. Now, the one thing we need to account for is a lot of times when we talk about these things, we're talking about outdoor. So if it was bred, if it was bred in the Northwest and then you're growing it outdoor in Colorado, you're going to definitely see there's going to be some different expressions. Now, that being said, if you're growing it indoors in Colorado and you've got high humidity and you've got certain things where you're mimicking that outdoor environment that you would have in Washington, then you've taken some steps out and you've kind of,
but you're still at a different latitude,
100%.
Still a different altitude.
As Eugene or as Neil and I have discussed, there's different barometric pressure. There's all these different environmental things. But
is it closer?
Have you kind of mitigated some of those issues? Of course.
Agreed.
But again, first time, I would say so. Over time, genetics are going to start to develop that vigor in the place that they're at. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they will start to.
But this isn't just taking a clone off a clone off a clone. You actually need to let it go to seed. Keep that in mind, right? And so that's one of the things that can be, and something like a tomato seed is going to be a little bit easier because it's going to be self-pollinating, right? So you don't have this major cross-pollination.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I thought maybe that cloning it, but it's like it's the same genetics. Whereas when you do a seed, it's kind of reshuffling the deck a little bit.
It's not just, it's not kind of, it is reshuffling the deck. So a plant, when it goes, so, you know, a lot of plants, some of them are just diploids, some of them are up to octoploids, some of them have 16 sets of genes that they can get really complex. But regardless of how many sets of genes, it can go back in there and turn them on or off between generations. But you have to actually go to seed to be able to do that, right? Now, I will say that clones do seem to settle down a little bit. And I will say run a clone at least 3 times in a new environment, minimum. I want to say Lovin in Her Eyes talks about this as well too. Shout out to Lovin. I mean, she's
we gotta get those guys on the show.
We got to get those guys on the show. That is true. And I mean, she does some wonderful stuff. I just saw something the other day, a new cross that she had out, but you know, that's definitely something that I think is, you know, valid to consider. Right. And, you know, make sure that it gets, cause like if I take something from Florida, which I have, you know, the magic mushroom as an example, I mean, dude, it wigged out and was throwing single leaves at me for a little while, you know, which actually then going down and talking to the boys down at, you know, where I got it from, they're like, yeah, man, if she gets stressed out, it does anything. And even has just kind of a weird little part in veg that like, she just does that. Be patient. Right. So I just definitely tell people when you do, but in this question kind of has 2 layers because it says, will seeds developed and purchased from other countries deliver the same growth and quality as they do in the country of origin? Well, the only issue with the country of origin is we deal with very few heirloom genetics anymore in this space. Most of them are polyhybrids. So I think your question is actually really cool. So it'd be like taking like
if you manage to find seeds that are from the country of origin.
So let's say you've got a pure Afghan and you're running it in, let's say, the San Luis Valley or something like that, right? So that would be from a place of origin, and regardless of where it was bred at, but then it's being grown out. Well, the thing that's nice about San Luis Valley is it's very similar to that Hindu Kush Valley and that area of the world, similar latitude, similar altitude and things like that. So I would go, you know what, you could probably, especially in the selection process, find some really amazing stuff. Now, if you took that and went to Colombia instead, now I'm thinking you might have yourself an issue, right? You're taking a pure Afghan and trying to make it work, you know, in that kind of environment, or coastal, or
that's
Costa
one of
Rica,
those,
something like that. I don't know.
That's kind of one of those caveats where, you know, if you really dig deep into this question, if you're taking something that's equatorial and you're trying to grow it in New York, you know what I mean? Like that is it's going to pose some issues. You know, I tell people when I'm consulting, especially in New England, you know, and they're saying, I want to grow sativas. You know, or as we like to say, the narrow leaf variety.
Narrow leaf drug variety.
I pretty much, I point to Durban right away because that's one of those ones that's, you know, pretty far south as far as where it's bred, but then it also is a short flowering narrow leaf variety in which you can get the numbers you want out of that plant and have it done in 65 days.
Which is why it became so popular. People loved it for those type of uplifting, you know, in general with the narrow leaf you're going to have in general.
It ticks the boxes, man. It produces. It does. That's why it's one of my top 5. I think people were somewhat surprised at that. I was myself. But it ticks a lot of the boxes. So.
Yeah. No. So this is a cool and very, you know, multifaceted question that can be answered in a lot of ways. But I actually think we did a pretty good job of you know. But always keep in mind with that, you know, with phenotype, it's that genotype plus you know, environment, and that environment, you know, depending whether it's indoor and outdoor, is going to have, you know, it's going to have differences. It's going to have effects. It's going to have influences. So, you know, if you want certain things from certain countries and you're wanting to do it outdoor, I would consider that place of origin based on where you're at. If you're in Florida looking at something that's classically from Colombia, probably not a horrible idea. You know what I mean? If you're in Colorado looking for classic Afghan varieties, probably not a bad idea.
Not a bad place to go.
Probably not a bad place. So thank you, Nickel75_WOMC. We see you out there. Thanks for the support. On to our next one. Why don't you give her a go, friend?
This one is from Ronald Cass, and he says he's currently running the full line of New Millennium, Does he need to add any PK boosters? I'm going to guess that this is a guy who got a pet pack from us.
He did. In fact, I actually took him up. Nice seeing you, Ronald. Appreciate you reaching out and asking this question. Great question.
And that's a great time to share. Just like Ronald, do you guys want to try some of the nutrients? jugdealers.net/samples. Whenever we get these questions, people always seems like they're shilling, but we're giving it away for free, baby. Just a taste.
Yes, we are. And honestly, get it while you can. The sample program will get a little more focused this year. It's still always going to be open, but as we come out with new products and we're really wanting to focus on new products, that's where you're going to see the sample, kind of directed towards. Right now, we're pretty wide open. So hit that sample button, fill out a grower sheet. Either Gabe or myself will actually, one of us legitimately, so why it takes a little bit of time, we'll review that and be in touch with you. So so need is a bit of a right. Does it absolutely need it? Well, I can tell you, no, it doesn't need it, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. Okay. There's a couple things. Number one, there was initially way back when, and we talked about this in another episode about, well, if a little bit's great, then a lot of it's got to be better, right? Mm-hmm. Well, so there was an original product called Thunder Bloom that was the bloom booster, right? Because as we know, and as we even talked about in the last questions episode, PK Appetite is really more of a companion product. It's not the booster. You don't get a lot of EC out of it. It's 0.6, 0.9. So what it does is just maximize P and K uptake wherever Catalyst. It can find it in the recipe, whether that's out of the bases or whether that's out of a bloom booster. So the Thunder Bloom was so great and so powerful. You used it once in week 3, once in week 5. That was it. Well, people liked it so much, they didn't use it like we directed. Plants were killed, pulled off the market long ago. And what we did in the interim is we actually coupled that whole line in our so-called secret sauce with Green Sensation very often. You see it in a purple bottle. It's from Plagerin. It's out of Holland. It's a very high quality bloom booster.
In my grow, I used to say it was my secret weapon. Like when people are like, dude, how do you get these flower sets? I go, man, I know it's a little bit of pricey.
I was about to say, and I'm gonna throw it out right away.
It lasts forever. It lasts forever. I still have my same bottle from 2 years ago.
It is not cheap, but what I will tell you is it does a lot of things in one, right? It is 0.89, so it's additional P and K. It does have traditional enzymes like beta-glucanase, cellulase, and pectinase, all three of those, which it will fully break down the cell walls. It also has iron in there, which iron is an essential part of chlorophyll, so it keeps everything nice and green and really able to uptake all the light that you're throwing at it.
The green
sensation. And last but certainly not least, it's a very special enzyme that actually lowers the activation energy that a plant needs to create indole-3 acetic acid, create its own auxin. So rather than putting a synthetic auxin on it, we actually kind of go in the back door, let the plant do it itself, but at less of an energy cost. So that is the bloom booster that you'll see in the secret sauce. I'd have no problem sending it to you, Ron. I believe you've got my contact at this point. The other thing is, be on the lookout, folks. And actually, we will have this as part of our sample program. Funny, we're talking about all this here rather soon because we're working on final labels, final registration, everything else to actually bring the Thunder Bloom back in. It'll be the last piece of the New Millennium, the line. Yes. New Millennium will be forever capped. And it's happening rather soon. So, but to say that it needs it.
Well, and here's the thing. I've been using the Thunder Bloom for a couple rounds now.
Yes, you have.
Which it's pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie.
Our buddy Terpecana Kyle's been using it. And he's like, dude, it's the truth.
I mean,
I haven't even seen it.
We tested ourselves first.
But here's the thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's not a PK booster.
Well, here's the thing. Like many things in our line, it sits in that place in the line. It definitely sits in that place, and its mode of action is different, but it's
not a PK. It's not
a 0-50-30 if that's what you're asking.
Yeah,
but it does have P and K in it, and it does bulk your flowers. So so it is a PK booster, but we do it differently. So I would say yes and no.
Because I know I've been using it, but I still haven't seen the numbers on it.
Well, whatever,
but I can tell yet. But here's my thing.
But no, it's not like a 0-50-30 or something.
I can tell you it freaking works. And so the other reason is, and this is kind of from my own personal experience with other boosters, especially something like I'm going to say a Moab or other things,
which would be your traditional 0-50-30 type booster.
If if you start hitting those plants before day 30 with any type of booster like that, they're blowing out and they're finishing early and
you'll get bigger flowers, but I'm here to tell you, you're going to take the same amount of oil and spread it out on more plant matter. And that ain't what we're here for.
But
folks.
with the Thunderbloom, you're able to use that. Man, I've been told day 14, I am always the cautious one. So I started using it, I think, at day 20, but I've used it at, I think I used it at day 20 at 3 mils. And then at day 30, 5 mils on. I've used it a lot more than I would use a normal PK booster, let's say.
Yeah. And again, because it's not those huge numbers and it doesn't have that huge thing. Yeah. So now again, does it act as a booster in the line? Does it get the effects of a booster? Yeah, but it isn't.
And there's some secret things in there that I haven't even been told about yet.
Just like everything. Now
that we're not allowed to talk about.
That's true. Now, the one thing I would say, in the absence, and let's say you want to just get a little more EC in there, right? You want to get a little more charge. You looked at it, you put the whole thing together and you go, you know what? I'm used to running at a little bit higher EC. I've got a hungrier plant. You can definitely use the bases and use that as a bit of a booster in the sense that get your EC out of the bases, right? So if you're running it at 5 mils equinox and 15 mils autumn, you can bump up to 618 or even 721 to get more towards that low 2s or even middle 2 of EC if that's what you're wanting to do and have a plant that can take it. Again, there's a lot of grower control in New Millennium. It's meant to be like that. It's meant to be flexible. It's meant to be adjustable. It's meant to be specific. So that's why the only thing I said with need. Now, granted, do we obviously like having a booster? Do we know we have some things that we've done extensive research to get those kind of effects? Absolutely. But again, in the absence and as you wait, as you either go and you can grab some green sensation if you want, but again, understand that the Thunderbloom will be out soon. So Ronald, thank you very much for your question. That I was definitely glad we got to address that.
Oh yeah.
Okay. We got another big supporter here. In fact, I've got some anyway, Dewberries 2024 on deep red and IR would be best at 1 hour on before or after lights, or do you think in whole 12? I have been doing full 12 hours and I don't know, to know your opinion, it'd be better on quality only. And as opposed to yield. Here's the thing. I mean, I feel like you might be messing around a little bit too much.
I mean, from the research I've been reading, generally 15 minutes before the lights come on, 15 minutes after they go off. I don't know how much I would go. The reality is the red is really what bleaches your plants.
Right.
And at this point, for me, it's always been about mimicking nature. And how
the hell does that happen in nature?
Yeah, well, I mean, but you
don't get 15 minutes of a deep red.
Yeah.
These things, here's the thing, run a full spectrum light, run it 12 hours, have it go on, have it go off. I'll be honest with you. Like when people over tinker in areas like this before they've got other things figured out, problems happen. Seems like you're over tinkering a bit, not going to lie. Here's the thing. Sometimes you just got to set and forget it. The more you fuck with shit, the more fucked up it gets.
Well, and it's tough because realistically, coming from the commercial world, I really want all my answers to be data driven.
Sure.
And
good luck with that.
And it's really tough to be able to draw, in where I come from, it would be easy to be like, hey, we're going to run 2 rooms side by side, one with, one without. We'll do the tests afterwards. You know what I mean? Whereas if you're not doing these things, it's really tough to kind of ascertain what worked and what didn't. Because even if you're running, let's say you're running, hey, we're going to run 1 room before and then we're going to run 1 room after. And the only thing we're going to change is that red light. There's still other variables in there that would make a difference because
you 60 days worth of
because you weren't doing them at the same time. And as we were talking before about barometric pressure and all the rest of these things, those are outside factors that can still
influence what's going to happen. So again, I think that and really, I like to always say, because it's something we always look. If I'm looking at it, I look to nature. Does that happen in nature? No. Is there a spectral change over time? Obviously, is there a change in intensity as there's sunrise and sunset? Absolutely, all that. But the thing is, you're getting so much intensity from the middle part of that sun that with these artificial lights having that intensity on either sides, to me, I'm just going, hell, it's just getting close to what the total would be in the sun when it got 4 hours of full light.
Well, and I like the 15 minutes, 15 after, they call it the flower initiator sort of thing. I'm fine with that. One of the places that you do see the far red interact in real life is that when the canopy starts getting blocked, the red is big, giant different wavelengths and they can penetrate. So sometimes it increases stretch. So if you bombard it with red early in mid cycle, it tells it like, oh, we're buried under canopy. We're getting a lot of red. Let's stretch a little bit.
But again, that can also flip shit out and get vegetative growth going instead of flowering.
Yeah.
Like oil farmers, people,
that's the crap.
Remember that.
Honestly, that's the crap that pisses me off so much.
Don't do stuff like that.
For the longest time, it's been, use LEDs because they decrease the stretch. Now there's this one band that increase. Like, what are we doing? Are we decreasing? Are we increasing?
Guys,
like,
just give plants a good full spectrum. Quit tinkering. Hey, is anybody actually a light scientist?
Well, and that's
anybody raise your fucking hand.
That's my big thing is that I
put a fucking LED in before.
I think moving forward,
porn doesn't count.
There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of. I think moving forward, you're going to see a lot of where people start to develop the same way we develop feeds and feed schedules and all the rest of this for plants. I think there's going to be certain light schedules for plants where it's going to be.
There's already been a massive attempt. I could give you a book that's this thick showing it, but the reality is there's so little research done because there's so many different varieties. Like, good luck with that.
And again, good luck with that. And most people are growing multiple cultivar in the same room.
Literally, absolutely. So I would say go back to the pyramid, man. Just a good environment, a good spectrum, good genetics. Take your time as a grower. Realize that we're a grower. We're a plant janitor. The plant grows itself. We ain't even a grower. Sorry, we're not a grower. We're a plant janitor. Plant grows itself. We're merely giving it the ability to do so. We don't do shit. It does all the work. So anyway, when we start thinking too much like we're a grower and we can do all these things and all this, man, just like literally take a step back and realize that plants were here before us. They're going to be here after us. Who's controlling who? You know what I mean? You want to read a good book on plants and who's controlling who? Go check out The Botany of Desire, and it'll really flip the script on the way you think about things and the way of who's attracting who's controlling who. And again, I think, I'll be honest, the worst grow I had in over 10 years was a COVID grow. Why? I messed with too much.
Yep. Because you were home all the time.
I was home the whole time.
Well, and I think a lot of people, look at cannabis and they go, oh, but we've come so far. And meanwhile, there's a lot of people like us who are like, we've come far. We came far from where we were and growing under fucking street lamps in the 1990s.
That's true.
But we still have, we know nothing about the plant.
I love these people, and we have a lot of people that love to tinker. We got a lot of tinkerers that are growers, right? And I truly do love the dewberries out there and
That's
having questions like this.
Why we couldn't keep Thunderbloom around, because we had tinkerers.
We had tinkerers. And I do love the people that with their minds think like that and that want to do more and that are very, it's clear right here. You're asking this question because you're saying, I don't care about a yield at all.
I just want better wheat.
I just want quality. And I love that you're asking like that, no doubt. So understand that we're definitely not like soapboxing on you. It's just like sometimes I really feel like it's easy to get in this rabbit hole of like overthinking this stuff.
Yeah, I think, we're still, again,
and to be honest with you, I haven't done enough and have enough research to even give you a direct answer on whether it's an hour before, after, during.
Even if everything they say is correct, it isn't about quality. Red isn't getting you more. It's about like decreasing like energy levels and day count.
Here's the thing.
You can eliminate a little day.
Yeah, red
They go to sleep faster. They wake up faster. That doesn't affect quality.
And red is, you get a lot of output with red. Red, like it's a very efficient light. You can put out a lot of light for a low amount of power with red, right? So I think that's one of the, in a way, I think some of these are almost just like little sheets. There's a reason the DLI, is there any spectral control on there? Anybody?
No.
Anybody? No. Okay. There you go.
And I have actually seen some adverse effects where there was some hermaphrodization, some issues like that. So, I mean, again, you gotta, I understand there's just because someone's giving you options doesn't mean you need to use them. You go out and you buy a Toyota Land Cruiser and it's got center lock, rear lock, this lock, that lock. You don't need to use those things all the time. You know what I mean?
I think that's great.
And I think a lot of people, again, because of the cannabis crowd, they want to tinker, like you said.
Right.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple.
The old
simple. Kiss.
The old kiss method.
I'll
baby.
keep the second S out, but keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
So
Stanley?
let's hop onto that. Let's hop onto that next question because honestly, we could continue talking about it.
I like it when questions get us going like this. That's
we should
right.
do a episode where it's like debunking certain things. Not that this is bunk. I do believe in the flower initiation. I think you can take time off your schedule as a whole. That doesn't increase quality.
I mean, here's the reality.
Well, we can also say you believe in that, but where's your evidence behind it?
Just pointing to the sky, baby.
That leads to what I was going to say.
Exactly. Point to the sky is not going to. There's nothing in there that just turns on red for an hour at the beginning of the day. So look at the sky, and the sky's going to tell you that doesn't happen.
That leads to what I was going to say is when when I go back to talking about pesticides or whatever, and I reference college-based papers, these are people getting their masters, spending 3-4 years studying the same goddamn thing for 4 years.
And I think that's
where I think
that's great and restrictive.
It is, but that's where we're limited is the fact that most people at home are not doing the same test for years at a time. Even me running your GMO right now, like I'm running it for the first time. The next room is going to be all GMO, just so I can get so I can get a baseline on, hey, how does this?
And if we go back to our rule, you still got to run it a third time before you can really expect to get those. I mean, I had it, the garlic cocktail. Tell you right now, first run, but I brought it back from a way different environment, right? Second run, I was like, okay, I see something there. Third run, it went complete banger.
Dude, this run at my place is just bananas,
right? So, with things like that, I've had to prove it to myself. And it is very difficult. Science is a reduction of variables, reduction to one variable in specific. And really science is a hypothesis. So you're either proving or disproving. And now we're starting over. So it can be very restrictive in the sense that it takes time to build those building blocks.
Especially with that, because it's 4 months realistically. And again, the most important thing with science is changing one thing. One thing. And that's why we say, even if you're doing one run and then the next run, if you don't have absolute control over your environment, even though you change that red light, if your temperature is 2 degrees higher average the entire run,
that's going to be different.
It's a different
or
run.
The humidity is a little bit different because now the stomas are open a different amount of time. And that means, things are moving through at a slower rate. I mean, it's just like, it is so interconnected, which again is why I say, if we think too much, these systems are so interconnected. The plants have it figured out. Just give them the environment, step back and let them do their thing. Right. Thank you again, Dewberries. Great question. Really got it going.
Yeah, real good question.
Really got
us all fired up.
Fired up here in the Jug Den.
So this one is from Caps and Colas.
I like the name, Caps and Colas. Yeah.
Hey, fellas, I'm loving this stuff. Totally understand why frost is the gateway jug. Would it be worth it to use Ruby in my deep water culture? Any chance you guys have a recipe for foliar spray for the silicone? I'm using real buckets. If I'm using real buckets.
Hey.
Yeah, I use the real buckets. It's a quality sip. We talked about sips on the last episode. It's just another more, if you don't want to build out your sip or do auto pots, it's a good option.
Now it seems that we're asking two different questions because he's talking about DWC and he's also talking about real buckets.
This is I do see two questions.
Yeah, I see two questions. Yeah, so that's true. That's true. Good point.
This is a twofer.
It's a twofer. 2 for 1. Caps and Colas. Well, why don't you take the first part? What do you think about Ruby and DWC, truthfully?
I would probably use the Fulvitech. Just keep it a little bit cleaner. I'm not a big.
However, if you are very comfortable with your temperatures, let's just say this: we have a ton of people running in DWC. But if you're in more of a northern climate, I'm more of a fan of DWC. I'm not a huge fan of a DWC in a southern climate, just because there's no.
Because once you get above like 68, 70 degrees, you're starting to invite. You could have fusarium, pythium, stuff like that. And,
and Ruby does have that bacteria in there. So you're going to see a little bit of some biofilm activity and stuff like that. So to run it even that much cleaner, Fulvitech is going to have all the same fulvic acid. So it's going to maximize that uptake.
Less of the bioactivity.
Yeah, it just doesn't
have. That's something the maker of real buckets will tell you himself. He says, keep it cool. It'll get funky if it gets warm.
Yeah. So in both those situations, I would say you could use Ruby and DWC, and same thing in real buckets. It's totally fine to use in there as long as the temperature is correct. And in fact, I think it's even safer to use in real buckets, quite frankly. In real buckets, I would go straight for the Ruby, but keep your temperature proper. Thank you so much for
The foliar recipe.
The fuller. Yes. The short answer is you absolutely can. And in fact, we've been, especially commercially, we've been pushing people using the Slicium at 2 mils. But then even if they want to with Ruby, you can do Ruby at 5 mils a gallon if you want 2 mils and 5 mils Ruby. For the people that maybe don't even have the injection space to do it, but want to still get the benefit of it, which you can get the benefit fuller as well. We do have commercial people that'll run that, you know what I mean? And then they'll just spray once a week, right?
And then remember, we do have the Slicium for veg available, and we also have the Slicium Bloom that's going to be in the red bottle. I'll be honest with you, I've been using the Slicium Bloom this round in my room. Man, that stuff's awesome.
Here's what I'm going to tell you is the technology's there. I'll be honest with you guys, you're going to look, they are very different looking products. So right out the bat, you're not going to look at it and go, oh, well, it's just the same thing in 2 different bottles.
The Bloom has some color to it.
It has some color, and what it has specifically, it has things are very specific. And one, I'll throw you a little bit of a bonus that has illegal saccharides in it. And that has...
Did you say it has illegal saccharides in it?
Illegal saccharides in it, yes. And it has some other things, some very special things in there. In particular, this is for sizing up flowers and terpene production. So it does have silicic acid in it, of course, because it's still silicium, but then it does have a couple of those additional things that are very, very specific for flower to target that flower production and that terpene production. So very cool stuff. Thank you for the question, Capsicolas.
I'm going to ask this next question. I know this is 2 in a row, but this one is direct. Okay. This one is directed. Right at you.
Oh, shoot.
So you can't ask yourself your own question.
That's true. That would be weird.
This is from...
I don't like the third person thing.
This is from AJ. This is from AJ Lautzenheiser.
That's got to be German.
He's got to be German. Got to be German. At least if he's not German, he's of German descent.
Love the European juggernauts. Respect to you guys. Thank you.
He is wondering how Jerin makes the 12 and 13 week cultivars finish in 9 weeks. I do hit it with extra winter. Do I hit it with extra winter, or do I just follow the secret sauce recipe and pull it in 9 weeks no matter what? I run a mixed perpetual garden, so I need to push a few to finish early here and there. Thanks for the show. My last harvest was so dank. Thanks to the show and New Millennium.
Shout out.
Hey, thank you so much for the, first off, great question. And it's something that does come up quite a bit. I'm not going to lie, because we're like, how the hell do you do that? Number 2, thank you for the support. Glad the garden's cranking for you. So long story short, always remember winter frost is on that sliding scale, right? So you're always thinking about using it the second to last week of flower. So if it was a 12 week that you actually wanted to run 12 week, you would run at week 11, right? But if you inevitably don't have the space, time, patience, whatever else, unlike myself, or really more specifically, I was running a longer term variety in a room with a bunch of other shorter term varieties that was all coming on one tank. I'll be honest, that's why I started doing that. It was out of necessity. Usually these things, you know, what is it? Invention is
necessity is the mother of invention.
There you go. Thank you, sir. That's why I have the guy back there. So that's kind of how it was for me. I never really intended to try and do that. It's just, I had GMO. I loved the flavor of it, and I wanted to be able to run it in my tents with other cultivars. And in that scenario, I'm usually running about 9 weeks. So I'll feed through 7 weeks. I'll hit it hard week 8. And when I say hard, some varieties, like we're talking about, like chems and stuff that really metabolize fast, man, it really doesn't take them more than like 3 days application. And I tell people minimum 3 applications with winter. That's to kind of account for the people that water every other day. So it's a week's worth of watering for them, right?
I'll run a little, on some of these too, these ones that you're trying to finish earlier than their recommended time. I'll run a shorter flush as well.
Sure.
I won't do a full 14 day. I'll more do like a 10 day where, like you said, it'll be 3 days of winter frost.
Right.
And then it'll be like 7 days of straight water.
And again,
it's exactly what I used to do with the GMO.
The grower control is really here. Now, for me with the GMO, what I would do typically is, again, I wouldn't extend out the flush or the plain water only. What I would do is give it a good 5 or 6 days of winter frost, twice a day. So it's getting somewhere in 10, 12 waterings. I'm telling people minimum 3. I was giving it up to like 10, 12. So I wouldn't dose it any higher. So still 10 mils a gallon, still standalone with Ruby, but I would run it longer. Now, the people out there that don't do a final week flush, in other words, they keep feeding, even though they'll step it down, but they keep feeding the end, which is more and more people. And they do see some bulking that they like at the end and whatnot. That's fine. You can still use winter frost, even though originally it was developed as a standalone. What we have people do there is step it down. So let's say you're at 3.0 EC, cut it in half, go to 1.5 EC, add winter and ruby if you got it, both at full strength, 10 and 5 respectively if you can, and run that for a full 10 to 12 days with maybe 2 days of straight water or nothing. The reality is winter and base nutrients, the reason you don't run them together is they are a bit antagonistic. Like you were saying, it actually will, in a way, bind and make the nitrogen unavailable. By doing that in both the decision end and the winter end, being that they're bookends like we've talked about, it tricks the plant into doing what we're looking to do. On the front end, on decision, it's bloom initiation. On the back end, winter frost, it's senescence. Senescence being that natural ripening process. Going to happen in any natural plant, right?
Well, and I would add that caveat that, yes, this question is geared towards winter frost, but you have to take into account that Jerin is using decision on the front end. So that, like we had said before, that's going to shave anywhere from 3 to 6 days off of the back end because you've initiated
because you're going to flower faster. Yeah. So. And now for somebody that's using the whole line, which it looks like decision included, you would be getting those benefits as well. So again, for those long cultivars, feed through 7, hit it hard week 8, let it go, plain water to 9. You might have to go into like 9.5, a couple extra days. Usually those longer ones, specifically GMO, will hold on for a while. And you're like, dude, I'm not seeing anything. And then within 3 days, you'll get full purple families and it'll really take a quick dump. It just takes a second to get there.
I mean, we used to take at Grassroots, we used to take GMO at day 70, and we would hit it hard with that winter frost, day 60 for a couple days. And then finish it out with fresh water. We've had 100 grams a square foot out of that.
Yeah. Now, one thing I will say, you're never going to get the same amount of output, right? You're going to get more yield by giving it more time. If I grow it for another month, there's no question I'm going to get. Now, what you will do is a whole nother run on the back end of the year. So you'll gain that yield out of the room if that is the concern, right? So you can either run it that full 12 and get that, or, if you do it in the more 8 or 9, keep in mind, you've got more time to get another grow squeeze in there at the end. So you don't really, you have less yield in the moment, but not necessarily in the long.
And that's with an average of, if you're doing 62-day rooms, 5.5 harvests a year.
That's it. So. Yep. All right. Great question. Thank you again for the support. On to the next one. This is Rogaroo Genetics. Rogaroo Genetics. Can Ruby Fulvic be sprayed as a fuller? And if so, what ratio? Wow. We really keyed ourselves up with this one, huh?
This is, I swear to God, I go in there and these are almost in the order of you guys' answers.
No, this is great. Is it okay to flush with carbonara? Yeah. Both great questions. Gabe, take it away.
Yes, you can Fulvic spray with the Ruby. We recommend 5 mils a gallon.
5 mils a gallon.
Do it every day. It will never hurt your plant.
It's 0-0-0. That's the thing. There's no nutrient content to it. It's conditioning the rhizosphere to maximize uptake. It does actually use, it's able to be used, fuller as well, which is kind of interesting. And the science in that is interesting. We did talk about it a little bit in our Fulvic episode. So if you want to get into a little bit more of that, that's a great place to do that. We won't waste a bunch of time here. We just want to let you know that it is very usable in both ways, both in the substrate and fuller, and you can use them both very liberally.
I would add the caveat as well, as we have mentioned in the past. If you are running hypochlorous, which
thank you, sir.
We're not going to get into how we feel about it. I think you guys know by now. But if you are running hypochlorous, this is the recommended way to apply our Fulvic, because you will see fallout if it is in the line with hypochlorous, whereas this is a way to kind of circumnavigate that and not have those issues.
Because some people are going to want to keep using hypochlorous, and we understand that. It's a little bit of a crutch, right? You can actually kind of get into almost an overwatering situation by keeping that hypochlorous always rocking on there. So with some of the systems that people have going these days, it's very heavy watering. So reality is we have some people that'll flip-flop, but at the same time, if they're not flushing out their lines, things like that, the reality, you might ask us why, and I'm sure that's the next question. Why not? They're antagonistic. Okay. So it's going to mean both of them aren't going to work. So they're canceling themselves out. So one, you're not going to get the cleaning properties from the hypochlorous acid, because literally what that is like it's little free chlorines that are breaking off and grabbing other stuff that's in there and neutralizing it. That's the cleaning aspect of it. Well, now it's neutralized the fulvic acids, but it's also used up the cleaning power from the hypochlorous acid, right? So they basically cancels both of them out, and you will get some weird fallout. I'm not even sure exactly what it is, to be quite frank with you, but it's not something that you want to see have happening. So, in theory, you could flip-flop days, but again, we see contamination in the lines. That would be choice number 2. Choice number 1 is don't use it. Choice number, 2 would be fuller feed with Ruby as well. Choice number 3 would be, if you really want to put in there, flip-flop days on it. And no, you can't just use the Fulvitech. That's not the point. It's actually the fulvic acid. It's not the bacteria that's the issue. So great question. And then
did you guys say their name? What was their name there?
Rogaroo Genetics.
Rogaroo Genetics.
And then the second,
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good
Rogaroo.
Rogaroo.
Either way, we read it.
So, and the second part of that question was, is it okay to flush with carbonaria? First off,
okay. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Would I recommend it? Not really. No.
I mean, and the only reason I say that is because
you've done all the work.
You've done all the work. The building blocks have happened. The only reason you even see it in our schedule is, especially even at that time, it was very common for a lot of companies to be pushing a sugar at the very end. That's the only reason we put it in there. If I'll look you dead in the eye right here and tell you, Gabe and I, neither of us use carbo in our. No. I don't use it with the Ruby in winter, and I don't use it in the final flush. I stop carbo when I stop using food myself.
Yep.
Great question. Thank you.
Here's this will be a fun one.
So I'll go ahead and read this.
This might end the show.
Yeah, this might be just about perfect.
Forever?
This might take some time.
So here's the thing, and we're going to get into a few different things on this one. This is from CJN 1093. It's a great question. I'm glad you bring it up because we've been seeing it more and more. And let's just get into it. I'll read this for Gabe and let him start. And if I flip back to 18 and 6, and that means 18 hours of light and 6 hours of darkness, my last week of flower, will using winter frost that last week be sending mixed messages to the plant? Well,
first off, you've already sent mixed messages to the plant by going to 18.6. And let me explain something to you why. I've seen, I'm not going to shout out where I've seen this, but I've had some people hit me in the messages asking me about this. Understand that cannabis is a photoperiodic plant. It flowers because of the nighttime cycle. So if you take it to 18.6, you are sending it back into a vegetative cycle. Now, while this in theory sounds great, it's stressing the plant, adds more oil, all the rest of that, it's bullshit, because the way it would really work is sending it to 18.12. Because again, going back to it being a photoperiodic plant, it's the nighttime cycle so if you send it to 18.12, it still thinks it's nighttime, and you would be adding more light, in which I don't think that would be beneficial either.
I'm not necessarily a fan. And again, we've talked about this a lot of times. When I have a question, I go and look at nature and go, what the hell happens outside? Because again, been around a long time. It's been figuring itself out and doing a lot of things out there for a very long time. So I look at it and go, what happens in nature? Well, we obviously know, no, the plant's dead. It's gone into the dead of winter. It's not the shortest day of the year until December 21st. And plants are long gone and done by that are annuals, including what we like to work with. So now I did propose to Gabe. I said, well, we're oil farmers. What if it some way, in a weird way, creates, a stress that puts out more oil because it doesn't know what the hell is going on? Maybe that's possible. I don't know. Now, what I would be very worried about is with things like chems, GG4, GMO, these things that have a propensity, anything with cookies in it, that are bag seeds and have a propensity to freak out and degrade your flower quality, right? So I would be worried about that. Now, I do say that I feel like you could do, and I know that we had pulled this up, it's like the gas lamp technique, or something like that. And this has been around for a long time. If I'm not,
let's find this.
Is this the one that I've talked about in the past?
It's the one. It's basically what you're saying, but it's a rotating schedule, and you do more. So
it was the gas lantern technique.
This
was one. So
GLR.
If this is similar to what I had seen a story, believe it was 1997 or 98. This is not, I read the story from 98. I read the story in 98, but there was a group of Canadian growers that were doing 1812. One of the complications is the lights come on at different times every day. So your teams have to go in at different times.
And that's why it becomes weird commercially.
One of the theory is that if you're doing 1812, the theory is that in 45 days you can get an extra harvest a year, but the way they were explaining it was in that 45 days, your plants are getting the same amount of light that they would get in 60 days.
Which if you do,
but it hinged on being 12 hours of darkness every day.
Because that comes down to the phytochrome red and the phytochrome far red. And that's the hormones that are in there that tells a plant what the day length is and what the photo period is. So phytochrome red builds up during the day, phytochrome far red degrades, which is also in some ways I go, yeah, it's supposed to be 12 hours. But if you do a bunch more light, will it degrade all the way back down? Again, I can't tell you for sure, but what I can say, pull the
was a gas lamp
or gas light technique, right? And the thing is what they do, and it makes total sense if you actually read it. So you give them 12 hours, and this is to keep things in veg, but to get a more vigorous and shorter veg. 12 hours of light, 5.5 hours of darkness, 1 hour of light, another 5.5 hours of darkness. And so what that's doing is it's tricking the plant because it breaks up, just like you said.
It's kind of like Einstein's sleep schedule.
Yeah, no shit. It breaks up the 12 hours of darkness. By doing that, it screws up the phytochrome red, far red, so it stays in that 18.6. So I take that back. What that's for is to keep things in veg without having to do 18 hours of light. You only do 13 hours of light.
Interesting.
So, but that makes total sense to me. By putting an hour of light in the middle of darkness with the photoperiodic plant, that makes total sense to me. I still can't find a way to make sense of 18 and 6. Now, I told you a little situation that I did one time, and I compared it to chilling units, and I'll tell you how, because it's a little bit weird. But I went the opposite way one time. So, well, what if I could, on the theory that we're giving plants way more light than they actually need, right? And thinking about even knowing that I've had plants that spent a good time of their life in the shade outside even, and only really got, a few hours of really good light. And I saw how they're performing. So I said, what the hell? Again, sometimes we tinker. You're right, Dewberries, we're tinkerers. And I said, what if I took it down to 10 hours of light, 14 hours of darkness? I save, or I think I might even went down all the way to 8 at one point in time. And it took me longer to finish. And when I did the math, it was just like you said, but opposite.
Yep.
So to get 60 days worth of 12-12 light, it took me like 75 or 80 to get up to the same amount of hours. And I went, so it's almost more about total hours of light intensity, which again is going to be
they're hitting
specific.
their DLI, right?
But same thing, talking, Bill was telling me about some research that Rob Janey's been doing in Missouri, and he has gotten an amazing amount of yield out of OGs, running them at 11 hours of light a day and 13 hours of dark. And that's something that honestly, I never would have thought of.
Well, no, and that's counterintuitive.
And that's full cycle. That's full cycle.
And that's counterintuitive. But at the same time, if we do talk about place of origin, which goes back to one of the earlier questions as well, which is interesting, right? And it's like, if you have a problem with potatoes, where do you go? You go to Peru, because that's where the largest amount of genetic diversity and where we originally took potatoes from and spread them around the world. If you have a problem with apples, where do you go? And this is from a horticultural standpoint.
Washington?
You would think, but no, it's actually Kazakhstan. That's where apples are from. So thinking about it like that, and I always like to think about place of origin and being able to manipulate genetics based on point of origin, which is great if you do know the poor origin, or if it's not a crazy polyhybrid, which a lot of our stuff is, right? But I still think you can pull shreds out of that. So yeah, this is a really good topic, and we got into it.
We got to answer the question though. Will using winter frost last week be sending mixed messages? My answer is, you're already sending mixed messages, so who the fuck cares?
I still say run
winter frost,
because you're trying to do the same thing and finish the plant. It's not like you're trying but here's what's weird. I mean, if I even read this,
I would say do 18-12 and
if I even read this the wrong way, I would look at it and go, well, are you trying to re-veg? You know what I mean? It's like, but I know that's not what the question is. So reality is, I would agree. It's already an interesting signal to be sending it. Hey, if you want to tinker away, maybe even do a little bit of a side-by-side if at all possible. If you got 210, something like that, maybe play around with the 18-12. People have been talking more and more about this, but bottom line, go ahead and use the winter frost with it, because you're trying to crash this plant, create those stresses, and get that additional oil regardless. So go ahead and give it a go. Now, you did have a second part to this question as well. If you lollipop at the end of veg, how long do you wait before flipping to flower? Personally, I like about a week. But if I've butchered on them pretty hard, I like to let them. But I do know people that the next day. And I see it more commercially. People go next day. I was always worried about the hormones, but go ahead, Gabe.
Dude, my old partner, Brett Lerman, he used to strip those
different
things down to 3 nodes and put them right in the flower.
Send it.
And I would walk into the flower room sometimes and I would be like, what the fuck did you do? And I swear to God, every time you'd come back a week later and you didn't even know that he did anything. So,
here's your answer.
Here's the thing, man. We baby cannabis plants a lot more than we need to. It's the same thing as tapering up your feeds on clones. Reality is 9 times out of 10, unless you're running something that's hypersensitive, you could put a clone once you transplant it on full feed and that thing will rock and roll. I do it all the time. And it's not a problem. It's funny because I was running the Scietetics at a teaspoon, and I just run it at a tablespoon right off the rip.
Here's what I'll say too. Right, when it's a difference when you only run through maybe a couple hundred of plants in a year at home versus thousands of plants in a month. You start looking at them a little differently.
The stragglers got to go.
Yeah,
you don't can't hang. They got to leave.
I love every plant that I trade. I get it. You home growers out there,
dude. There's a group that I am dealing with in Maryland, and they grow them apically, and I think it's a week or 2 into flower, then they top it. And I looked at them and I was like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
I mean, but at the same time,
they take it.
But at the same time, I'm also going to look at it and go, well, you know what I mean? They're going to shave more total days off so they can get more in the year. Like I'm going, okay, show me the numbers. Like
why, Gabe, why do they top in flower? What benefit do they get from that?
Because they're traditionally azalea or not azalea. They're traditionally annual and chrysanthemum growers, and that's the practices they were taught, and they employ
sometimes it's hard to teach an old dog.
Wow.
I mean,
new tricks.
I really. It's tough because I do know some folks on the East Coast that have PhDs that come from traditional horticulture that try to put those methods into our crop. And
here's the thing, what you guys got to understand, I could give you a grower's handbook it's like the Knott's grower's handbook that was going to tell you exactly the EC to run and how long for lettuce and all these different established crops because everything's been established. We don't have that for what we grow.
And a lot less,
the rules
less
haven't been
genetic
set.
Diversity, right? Like when you get these lettuce, we're growing thousands of kinds of cultivars.
And that's the thing that I'm keen to point out all the time is that, when I discuss corn or carrots or broccoli or any of these things, these are bananas. These are things that have been homogenized over hundreds of years now, and we're growing one version. Cannabis, we're growing so many different varieties.
But here's the thing. Okay, and I'll play devil's advocate. We have a lot of different names, people. Okay, so let's play this game.
Remember, Adam did the OG Gnome project.
What do we really have? We got like 5 strains that have all just been they've been crossed,
and now they're naming phenos like the super booth.
They're all cousins.
So I mean, I don't know. So
Not
here's the thing. I don't personally. I think I love that people love to think that cannabis is so crazy and diverse. It's not like you think, folks. We just haven't put any real numbers to it. No, like we had a company that was trying to do it, but it was stealing everybody's genetics.
Hello.
Hey, too soon?
Shout out to what was that again?
Phylos.
Phylos genetics.
More like goodbye Los.
Yeah, goodbye Los.
We'll take your genetics.
But what I did find was interesting because it was starting to like at least look at that argument and say, well, how diverse are we? You know what I mean? And the reality is go to rareseeds.org and you're going to see more diversity on the 18 pages of tomatoes than you've probably ever seen in your life. Now, that's the largest heirloom seed company in the world. But my point is it is watered down in many ways in commercial, but not as much as you'd think, again, at the home. So I think those are going to be interesting things that we're going to be able to see in the future. What is the true diversity? You know what I mean? And then what practices can we use? Because clearly it's not all of them. Mm-hmm. You can't just carbon copy stamp. And none of them are carbon copied to each other either. It's not like you take the practices from strawberries and just go to lettuce and be like, well, we do the same thing, right? No. So we are establishing this stuff, in cannabis and in our world, which I think is also an exciting, and innovative and fun place to be. And that's one of the reasons it kind of keeps us going, keeps us entertained, keeps us motivated because, I do believe we've come a long way in cannabis, but I believe we've got a lot farther to go. So anyhow.
Hell yeah. Next question. We got time for one more?
Yeah, I think this is our final question from the homie Mountain Matt. Shout out to you, Mountain Matt.
Mountain Matt.
I see you, Matt.
Mountain Matt 2, though, I believe. Is this Mountain Matt 2?
Sometimes we get deleted. Anytime I see a 2, I always go, did you get deleted, Mountain Matt?
Okay, we'll
second account.
So Mountain Matt do. Is this my question to ask you?
Yeah, I believe it is. Yeah.
Okay. What up, guys? Love the show. I have a lighting question. In my room, I have 1,000-watt HPS over about 10 plants. I keep the digital ballast down on 800 watts. So I'm debating putting another 1,000-watt light in my room and turning both down to 400 watts. Is this bad for the ballast and or the bulb? Budget is a concern, and I already have this equipment. Would you run a 400-watt bulb, or is this all a bad idea? Any thoughts would be greatly appreciated. Much love. I mean, I know. Here's what I've always.
I know what I'm going to say.
I mean, here's what I've always been told about the HPSs. HPSs, when you turn down the ballast, not only is it still using more power than what you turn down. So
using the full power.
But then beyond that, you're really only turning down the red spectrum. You're not turning so basically what we always used to be told before we would put halide bulbs in our HPS fixtures was, if you're using it in veg, turn it down because it'll give you more blue because it's turning down the red. And that's basically probably a temperature-based thing.
I've been flipping those switches on those ballasts forever. I never knew what the hell it meant.
Oh yeah. For me personally, I would be cranking your lights to 1,000 watts, not down at 800 watts, and I would not be turning anything down.
Does that F with the temperature as well, of like the way we used to air cool it?
Yeah. Here's the easy answer on that. Watts equals heat. Yeah. So the more
Kelvin is a color temperature.
Yeah, the more you're cranking out, the more it's always funny to me when people are like, "Oh, I have 1,000-watt LED. It doesn't put out any heat." No. Watts equals heat.
Yeah, it's pretty synonymous.
Whether it's radiant.
Here's what I'm going to tell you right off the bat to answer your very specifically and very directly your question: is this bad for the ballast and or the bulb? Yes. And yes. So I would do what Gabe says. I would crank that. I'm curious why you have it down to 800. Keep that thing up higher. Don't bring it down over your plants. Hang that thing as high as you can. Hang it high. Let the plants grow up into that intensity. So if you're bringing that down onto the plants at all, and that's why you got 800, crank it up to 1,000 and take it all the way up and never move it again, ever.
And understand, running it at 800, I understand that you're trying to save power. You're not saving power.
You're not saving power, and it's going to be less efficient because of that.
How did I never know that?
And not only that, you're going to be using less reds. So you're going to get less yield. So it's going to be a 2-part less yield because you're going to have less actual photons coming out there, but then less of them are going to be red. And that's where you get a lot more of, right? That's where a lot of your intensity and your bulk and your yield happens as out of the red side. So I understand the budget is concerned. So don't go and buy another one. Yeah. Don't get a 400-watt bulb. I don't even know where you'd get a 400-watt bulb.
Turn them up, baby.
So
on average, a 1,000-watt fixture, at least in my place, using Excel Energy, on average, 1,000-watt fixture costs about $50 a month to run.
Here's the other thing, and this is just an idea, and you could totally do it if you really wanted to. If you're anywhere close to your dryer, you could run a 240 cord over to it, and I would get it custom built to the minimum length that you needed, which wouldn't be hard. Any electrician could do that. And then you could plug in a 240 power, so you'd be running 4.5 instead of 9 amps if you wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. That would also be better, actually, on your ballast. It's going to be much more efficient. 120 is going to fail it 9 times out of 10.
By the way, for any of the home growers out there, I know this is especially a challenge on the East Coast, but I would definitely do your best to switch over to 240. It's just more efficient power. It's safer.
And you can put more stuff on it.
Safer on your house. Yes. There's more, I have it so it's set up where it's a 30 amp circuit, six outlets. We can run just fine. But again, that's really what you want to be. And the other thing is as well, when you're running 120, the power signature is a lot closer wavelength. It hits the ballast different. When you're running 240, it's just cleaner power.
Yeah, it's easier. It's easier on the equipment. I mean, there's a reason the DLI literally does no 120 drivers anymore. And I'm not an electrician, so I couldn't tell you why. But there's some inefficiencies in there that causes certain wires to run too hot, and it's just a mass amount.
And
of
they
failures.
also corrode and stuff. We've been covering these energy topics on other shows with Dude Grows and stuff. And so it's like we had a viewer post their grow. Like, hey, you were talking about I run 120 on my thing. I figured I'd go check it. And he almost melted his house down.
Yeah.
You know, and it's only one leg of the power's clean.
That's the
and
thing.
the other prong is just covered in like blue.
So, and if you guys do have any
oxidation.
questions about that, I mean, really, honestly, in this day and age, it used to be a heck of a lot harder when Gabe and I were growing when we were younger because it was so illegal.
Oh,
to
bro,
get
you had to
240
make
power,
we used to make special boxes that you would plug into your 240 outlet, and then you would have this kind of breaker box where you'd have plugs that you could plug into.
And you still can. I think Titan Controls might still have it, but there are things that you can again plug
Yeah,
off.
we made them on.
Yeah, exactly. You had to back in the day, but you got to understand that's what the one place commonly in your house you will be able to find 240 power is your dryer outlet.
Another, if you have questions, jugdealers.net, scroll to the
look at
bottom.
there.
We got a questions thing, goes right to the boys.
And that will be our final question for this Q&A. You're going to see, honestly, good content creates so many good questions. So you're going to keep seeing us do this.
Keeps us fresh too.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
And this is fun, honestly.
And it lets you know we guys see you. We read these comments, and it's hard to physically type every single answer. So we bulk them up, put them out as an episode.
So keep them coming, guys. Keep the questions coming. Sorry if we didn't get to yours this time around. Keep the faith.
I got to get
to you next time.
hey, shout out to Paul too, because I do need to get to the phosphates and phosphites question. It was something he asked me when he was making an order. So shout out to you, Paul. I promise the next episode for questions, I will touch on phosphates and phosphites. And for those of you who are curious, tune into our next questions episode.
Hey, guys, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate you. We see you all out there. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sticking with us this long. Until next time from the Jug Den.
Peace.